Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we are doing a GrimDark recommendation video. If you don't know, I have a readathon happening in April called REALMATHON, where we have 4 realms competing to be the last magic standing. So you have prompts for your books to either increase your own realm's magic or decrease another realm's magic. It's very military fantasy inspired, and each realm also has a bonus point, which is its specific subgenre, and Calamus, which is the land of deserts and has flying, fire-breathing demon cat-like things. Its subgenre is GrimDark, and I read a little bit of GrimDark. Some of my favorite books are GrimDark, and there is a bunch of GrimDarks I still want to read. So I figured I would do a recommendation slash TBR video for GrimDark, as it is one of the subgenres that I actually read a decent amount of. Don't read whimsical, don't really read. I read a little bit of fanro, but not enough to make a video, and Polar Fantasy I have a little bit stack, so I could do one of those. For GrimDark, a lot of these are staples in the genre, but there are a couple that I feel like are less heard of. So we're going to start with ones I've read, and I'm going to go through my staples first, and then try and get into some that could be a little unknown. But before we get into the video, I should probably do a little bit of a GrimDark definition. GrimDark is a very broad category. For me, it typically means morally gray characters who you don't really agree with all their choices, as well as a little bit of dark and grittiness. There's normally a little bit of gore, some battle scenes in it, not necessarily battle, but a little bit of ickiness. But it's really just this overwhelming feeling of, I feel like, darkness and not agreeing with the character. The first book we have is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is my favorite trilogy, so it's obviously very standard to be on this list. The first book I feel like is not as grimdark, but the trilogy as it goes on gets even darker and darker. Rin, our main character, we really just despise every decision she makes. Rin makes the stupidest decisions. She just irks you a little bit, but you can also understand why she's making these decisions due to her background and who she is as a character, but they still irk you. The Poppy War follows Rin, who is a dark-skinned orphan from the Rooster province, who takes a test to get into the greatest military academy. She ends up passing the test with flying colors, and the top people get a scholarship to the military academy. So she goes to the military academy where she faces diversity and struggles because she wasn't really supposed to be there, because an orphan and a dark-skinned girl should never, quote-unquote, be at this military school. The system is not made for them to make it here, and she just struggles. And then we also enter the war that's happening through the story. The first half does take place in a military school, and then the second half is front and center war, with the second and third books being all about that war and that darkness. Trigger warnings for so many things in this book. There are a lot of rape scenes in this book. And it's also based on the real life events, so it does get quite dark, and it's even darker because you know that us as humans did these things to people, which is very, very terrible in my mind. That's the first one. Another absolute staple I feel like in this genre nowadays is Rage of Dragons. I don't own the first book, so I'm holding up the second book by Evan Winters. In this story, we are following Tao, who something happens to him and it sets him on a journey for revenge, and he sets off to be the best of the best. He wants to prove to everyone that he can be better than the people who are above his station. This is just a quest for revenge, and Tao is another character that makes stupid decisions that we don't agree on, but I love him for it. The world in this is also extremely amazing. I can never remember it, so I'm 100% guessing, but it's a world where about 1 in every 100 men can have the ability to get stronger, and 1 in every 1,000 women have the ability to call down dragons. There's also this cool kind of underworld dimension, shadow dimension that happens in the first book, and I really, really liked the magic system in here. And there's dragons. I love dragons. This one is one of my highly recommended ones. With the Poppy War, it's a little more controversial. You either love it or you hate it. I don't know a single person who doesn't love the Rage of Dragons that's read the Rage of Dragons, so I definitely recommend this one. Another staple, especially if you're on this channel because it's one of my favorites, is Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. This is the Book of the Ancestor trilogy. I own all of them. this is the Book of the Ancestor trilogy. This one is incredible. We are following Nona Gray, who goes to a Covenant of nuns, but the thing is they are assassin nuns. And this is another school setting. This book follows, like, Red Sister is the first year, Grey Sister is the second year, and Holy Sister is the fourth year, I believe. We kind of skip a year somewhere in there. And in this series, Nona is stupid. Nona makes stupid decisions. Nona is dark AF. Just Nona. I loved this series. I actually don't reread books a lot, but I have been thinking that it might be time for a reread of these because I loved them so much. I can't really explain to you what this is about because I feel like it ruins everything, but there is a war that is happening in this book because the sun is disappearing and the ice is expanding, so the territory that people can live on is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, so the different nations are kind of fighting for territory. There is a sequel series to this trilogy as well. I've only read the first book. I do own the second book, called the Book of the Ice, which is set before. I think it's set before the events of Book of the Ancestor. And it's not as good, but I'm still enjoying it. But this one is definitely a must for the GrimDark realm. And then we have Master of Sorrows by Justin T. Call. This book was a little borderline for me to put on this list because I think most people would categorize it as grimdark. It is following a villain origin story, but you don't see much of that origin story in this book. It's setting up a very, very long series, and you can see aspects of grimness in our main character, but I don't think we really get it completely in this book. But I'm going to put it on this list because I think that it is going to get there. It is going to be a grimdark series, and there are definitely elements of it in here, and we don't necessarily love our main character at all times. Master of Sorrows follows our protagonist who is born with magic, and in this society, magic is bad and magic should be eradicated. Those born with magic are killed. He has been hiding his magic, and the thing is that he actually lives in a village going to school to be an avatar, and the avatars are those people that hunt down magic relics and people with magic, and they're really in charge of keeping magic away. So he struggles with the concept of magic being bad, but then also magic being good, because he has magic and he has seen how magic can be good. There we go. Another school setting. One that I have recently read is Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson, and this one I'm unsure about as well, because there are very big aspects of darkness in this, and there are some characters that you really, really don't agree with and I think make stupid decisions and are a little morally gray, but then we also have a couple heroic characters. We're following 4 different POVs, so I think that this series could heavily lean towards grimdark, but with only one book being out, I can't tell you that it's 100% going to. I'm making an educated guess that I think it will, and I think that there's enough grim darkness in this book that it could count. Illborn follows a world where their Lord Adul, which is like their Lord Adul, is given powers and he uses them to unite the land, and then he dies and then he becomes their god. Thousands of years later, there are 4 characters who are gaining magical powers that are similar to what Lord Adul had, and they're actually being hunted down by the religion, and you just don't really know what's gonna happen. And I really liked this. I always put a disclaimer that this book is heavily focused on religion and a big basis on Christianity. So if you don't like that in your books, this might not be the book for you. But if you do, and if you don't mind it, then I highly suggest, because the world in this is incredible. And the last one for books I've read is Half a King. Half a King is a little borderline grimdark. I think it's normally categorized as grimdark just because the author is Joe Abercrombie, and Joe Abercrombie is known as the daddy of grimdark. I started with Half a King, and I don't think that it got the grittiness that I wanted. It is his YA series. There is a little bit of darkness, and we definitely hate things our character does, but it's not full-on grimdark and not what I expected from Joe Abercrombie, but I still need to try First Law, which will be on this list in a bit. So I'm not judging Joe Abercrombie yet. I just went on a tangent. This book follows our protagonist, Prince Yarvi, who does not want to be king, but when his a father and brother die. He's kind of forced into the role, and it's kind of just a quest for him to get the throne. There's some mischief that happened for this all to set up. And there's all the books I have read. So now we're going to go into books that I haven't read. So this is like my to be read, my TBR for GrimDark books I do want to read in the future that would count as GrimDark. I might read a couple of these soon. You can read a couple of these soon. Anything. Since we just talked about Joe Abercrombie, let's do First Law. Since we just talked about Joe Abercrombie, let's just do First Law. So First Law is like the epitome of GrimDark. I have no idea what this book is about. I want to read it. Everyone says it's so morally gray. The characters, you just kind of hate them, and that entices me so much. I can't tell you what this book is about. I know absolutely nothing, but I am so excited to get to it at some point and really dive deep into Daddy GrimDark. And I think that if you are to read one GrimDark book and you want like a real idea of GrimDark, this is probably the book to read. But I'm just putting it on this list of I need to read this. I have no idea what it's about, and I'm sorry. Another one is Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. I really need to get to this. This is book 1 of the Broken Empire trilogy. This one, I believe, follows a prince who sees his mother and father killed, and then as he grows up is on a revenge story to claim the throne again. He is a leader of a band of bloodthirsty thugs by the age of 13. So that sounds cool. I like that. Again, a book that I have not read yet, so I don't really know much about, but because I loved the Book of the Ancestors so much, I really need to get to this, because I think I will love it. And I feel like the most well-known GrimDark in the world is Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This one probably shouldn't belong on this list because I actually have no plans to ever read this book. I've watched the show, and I just feel like with the ending of the show and the fact that the last book is probably never coming out, I have no want to read the book, but I think this is the most well-known GrimDark. I think the show really put GrimDark on the map, and I needed to include it in this list for those of you who needed the validation that this is GrimDark and you should read it. Since I haven't read the book, I'm going off the show, so sorry if I get things wrong. We are following different rulers of the political lands here as they all try to take over each other, I think. And it's just really dark. There's lots of killing. It's really gritty, and characters suck. Characters literally suck in this, and I'm here for it. There you go. I just was like flinging this around as I went. And then we have Jade City by Fonda Lee. Again, a book I haven't read. I have heard the characters in this are so morally gray, and I need to read this because I think I'm gonna love it. This is the Greenbone Saga trilogy. All 3 books are already out. And this says family is duty, magic is power, honor is everything. This follows a urban city where we have different leading houses who can use the power of Jade, which gives them different powers and strengths, I think. But when one of the houses starts making a drug for Jade that anyone can then ingest, the housings start to battle and kind of, I don't know. I really don't know. Describing books I haven't read is so hard. But this one, everyone talks about the ending to it. If you follow my channel, you know I hate hardbacks, and this is one of the only hardbacks I have because I bought this book as soon as it came out because I was like, I need to read that. I still have not read it, and all the other books are out in paperback already. So I'm kind of mad at myself for this one. 5-star prediction right here. Another one is A Crown for Cold Silver by Alex Marshall. I really don't know a lot about this book. I actually did like an Ask Indigo, which is like Indigo Chapters is where we buy our books, and I went online and I filled out like a survey saying these are like the types of books I'm looking for and books I like. Can you suggest something to me? And Ask Indigo suggested this book, and so now I need to read it, and it sounds very grimdark. I've seen it on a couple grimdark lists. Literally this front says all roads lead to war, and on the back it says it was all going so nicely right up until the massacre. 5 villains, 1 legendary general, a final quest for vengeance. Vengeance stories tend to be grimdark and I am guessing this will be. And I'm very just excited to read this, and that's all I'm going to tell you about it. And then one I don't own yet, but I really need to get my hands on, is The Grey Bastards by Jonathan French. From what I've heard of this book, it is the show like Sons of Anarchy, like if you've watched that, it's like a biker gang, but the bikes are hogs and the gang is orcs, and it's just like, sounds like there's going to be a lot of comedy in it, a lot of darkness, and I actually really enjoyed the Sons of Anarchy and the Animal Kingdom. Those are both really good, and so I should read this. This is all I know about this book, but I mean, I was sold with like hog bikes and orc biker gang. I didn't need to know more. This sounded so good. I want to ride a hog. That sounded... I regret the things I say sometimes. That's what she said. And the last one on this list is Blood Song by Anthony Ryan. And the last one is the Blood Song by Anthony Ryan. I forget this series title. This follows our protagonist who was the 10th son to someone and then is dropped off at the door of like the 6th realm or something. I forget the little details, but he is then put through training to be a Knight of the Order. And when he is old enough, he really hates his father for not letting him get the birthright that he was due, and I think it's a quest for revenge and vengeance. And again, I think that there's a school setting with him being trained to be a knight, but I'm not 100% sure. But this sounds really good to me, so maybe it'll sound good to you. This is just full of I don't knows for the TBR, but there we have it. Those are all the GrimDark recommendations and TBR that I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are taking part in REALMATHON, I hope that you enjoy that too. Let me know if any of these sound good below, if you have other GrimDarks suggestions and all of that jazz, and if you'd like to leave an emoji to let me know that you were here, but you don't know what to say, you can leave me, I think there's a blood emoji. It's like a red teardrop looking thing. Let's leave that, and have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much. The REALMATHON announcement video will be linked in the description bar below as well. Have a great day.